Hey. Welcome to episode 243 of Oglala Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman, and today's episode is called Sacred Success. Sacred Success. And I'm going to start off with a quote from today's guest. The seventh generation is the native youth of today. They had lots of challenges, and their ancestors had lots of challenges. But the seventh generation is here to succeed, and lots of great things will happen. And as I always say, I'm a firm believer that one of those seventh generation youth will be president of this United States. I'm going to tell you more about our guest and his great wisdom and his amazing life. But first, this. Ooh, where is this? But first, this.
Today's guest, Jim Warne.
Welcome back to Oglala Awesome Podcast. Educator-advocate-filmmaker Jim Warne is a member of the Oglala Lakota. His Lakota name, which I'll have him pronounce, means kills on horseback. He's a motivational speaker and has testified before Congress. He has written over $50 million worth of grants and contracts for universities and tribal nations during his 22-year tenure at SDSU Interwork Institute. Ready for more? Jim's an Emmy-nominated filmmaker. He's worked as an actor and stuntman. And oh, by the way, he was drafted in the 1987 NFL draft and played tackle for the Detroit Lions. Please help me welcome Jim Warne.
For having me here at the Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. It's an awesome name, the title of your podcast. So I'm glad our paths crossed in South Dakota with my work that I do out there with the University of South Dakota. And then, so I'm glad to be a guest and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Speaking of names, would you please say your Lakota name and what it means to you?
Well, I was honored with my great-great-grandfather's name, Tasunka Akan Wicakte, which means kills on horseback. And my mom, Beverly Stabber Warne, and Stabber is her Lakota name, and as well as my son now, so he carries her name forward for another generation. So it's nice to have that connection to the ancestors, to our people, the indigenous people of this land. So it's nice having that knowledge and connection to the people of the Oceti Shakoi, the Seven Council Fires. And of course, I'm the Oglala Lakota band of that group. So it's wonderful to be able to work back in my homelands, as I say, because I don't live in South Dakota, but through the university, I'm able to do a lot of work and come home. So I'm very fortunate.
So Jim, who were the people who inspired you when you were young?
In my youth, it was primarily athletics. As you mentioned, my opportunity I got in professional football was through having those dreams as a young man. And of course, I just watched a documentary about Jim Thorpe, which was well done, and told his story and what he went through as an athlete, and of course, as a member of the Sac and Fox Nation, and what he faced in discrimination, even as a champion athlete that's known as the best in the world, because no one's done what he did at the level that he did in professional football and professional baseball, as well as the Olympics in the decathlon and pentathlon. So it was him and some others. Billy Mills from my tribe. He was actually from Kyle Village, where my mom's from.
Oh, Billy Mills.
Yeah, Billy Mills. And
would you please tell a little bit of his story for people who don't know?
Oh, he's really, I know him still personally, which is wonderful. And he's out there doing a lot of good work through his foundation and working with different organizations and schools, and doing good work through his platform obviously as an Olympic champion. He's the only.
But would you tell the story, like, what was he an Olympic champion in?
Oh, in the 10,000 meters. So the only American to win the 10,000 meters in the Olympics in 1964 when I was born. So he's a little bit older than me, because he did that, I think, when he was 20 years old, or maybe even younger, but he was a young man. But he accomplished that in the Tokyo Olympics, as I recall. So I obviously, growing up in that area, and then always coming home to Kyle and Pine Ridge, and when we were living in Arizona, I was able to hear the stories about Billy Mills and his accomplishments as an Oglala Lakota, and then of course the legend of Jim Thorpe as well. So it was nice having those role models that I could look up to and hope to be like someday athletically.
How did So it's one thing to play football. It's another thing to be a talented football player on a high school team. But how did you rise to the level of being able to be drafted into the NFL? What was that like was it practice or talent, or how would you describe it?
Well, I had the physical, capabilities, and then obviously you have to associate that with hard work and then dedication to the craft, and not only athletically, but obviously you have to get the grades to stay eligible to play, not only in high school, but in college for sure, where they really track with, they don't want any violations at the collegiate level, particularly the D1 level, where there's now so much money associated with college football. And, it's great that I was part of that foundation in the 80s, being part of that Rose Bowl team at Arizona State University, where we beat Michigan and put our program on the map. And now having a good program currently, it's really nice to be a Sun Devil fan and a fan of Arizona State that happened to get to play for Arizona State and finish out my career at the Rose Bowl, as well as the Hula Bowl, the All-Star game right after the Rose Bowl, where all the All-Americans got to play in the All-Star game in Hawaii. So that was a good close to my senior year at Arizona State.
What advice, Jim, would you give to like a young boy watching 8 or 9 who wants to play football and has dreams of being in the NFL?
Well, I won't just limit it to football. I'll say to all sports, because there's so many sports that can be participated in, which is wonderful. And I happen to be a 4-sport athlete in high school, which is rare these days. Yeah, I played 4 different sports in high school because I loved all the different sports and participating, and kind of like Jim Thorpe being good at all these different sports. I wanted to be like him. So I was all around athlete in high school. I got that. And, you know, it was nice to be able to play all these different sports. So I'm a fan of all the different sports. And then now with Title IX, from when I was growing up at Tempe High School in Arizona, now there's so many more opportunities for our female athletes, which as a grandpa makes me happy because I have a granddaughter coming up and I want her to have opportunities to participate in team sports, because it's proven that people that participate in team sports really learn how to transition those skills into the world of work or in social environments and other different things that, you know, I didn't know I was going through at the time as a kid. But, you know, that was part of my development, which helped me in my professional life after athletics. So, you know, I always say with having talent, that's not the only thing, you know, because I've done camps and have done some coaching for all-star teams, and I can see the guys and young ladies that really put that effort in. And I want those type of athletes, because sometimes the talented athletes, especially when they're young, just they have it so easy, they don't, you know, perform at the level they should. So, you know, sometimes I got lazy, and I was fortunate to have good coaches that would push me so that I wouldn't become complacent, but continue to push me to get to another level. So it's nice to have coaches and mentors and that support, first of all, from home, so that you can participate in all these sports, because it's mom and dad or aunt and uncle or unchi, grandma, as we say, you know, that's taking you to practice and whatever it is. So as a young person, always remember who's helping you along the way and who's providing you that mentorship and example. So that's what I always suggest, is find those people that want to help and utilize that as a mentor and a coach down the line. That will help you a lot.
Your mom and dad said something like "go for your dreams," but also develop a wonderful work ethic. How has that? How have those words served you in life?
Oh, well, they both were great examples of what it took to succeed in terms of not only vocational, but as family, as a family unit. And both my parents worked. So we were middle class in Tempe, Arizona, and mom worked at Arizona State Nursing. And then dad was in real estate until he had to retire early due to his complications with multiple sclerosis. So I grew up with my dad having a significant disability, but I also saw him working for years from his Amigo scooter, his wheelchair, you know, his electric wheelchair. So that's something where I remember him going off to work in those days before ADA and any laws to not discriminate against people with disabilities. My dad was still working at a high level. And I always say he's the strongest man I knew. He just happened to use a wheelchair. So I always saw Pops and not the wheelchair. So that was something that gave me a different perspective of the quote unquote disability community, and that it's not the disability, it's the person that we need to focus on. And we're all have various degrees of abilities, regardless of what we call disability in our American English language. And from a Lakota perspective, in our languages, our indigenous languages, all of them, none of our languages have a word or a term for disability. So that philosophy doesn't exist. That's just a natural part of the life cycle, if you will, in terms of just circumstance, and that we all have these uniquenesses, if you will, but it's not termed disability, or that you can't now participate in the tioshpe, the community. You know, there's a role for everybody, regardless of what we would call circumstance, I guess, versus disability. So growing up with that example of my father having a disability in a society that really was anti-disability at the time in the 80s, watching him still work hard as long as he could, that was a great example for me to grow up with. And then culturally, having it not even being it's a circumstance, not a disability, as we like terminology. We like to put those labels in our American language. So,
where do you think your father found the strength and the passion and the purpose to keep going off to work, even
oh,
though it was so challenging?
yeah, I remember the state of Arizona actually fired my dad due to a lack of being able to do all the work, like writing hard enough to get through carbon paper today, which are simple, assistive technology accommodations,
Mm.
post ADA, but pre ADA, they were able to fire him because of that. And I remember when he called that family meeting, and I was always, now as a dad and a grandfather looking back, I know that had to be hard for him to call that meeting and tell us that that he was fired from his job, and that we may struggle for a little while, and we need to be paired as a family. And mom was still working as a nurse, part-time, but she was in school going for her master's. And so these were things that he was mentioning, but all I could just think of as I would think back to it was, well, pops, you're going to get a job. I don't see a problem here for long, because I just saw the man and how strong he was as a role model as my dad, and knowing that somehow he would get a job. And he ended up getting into real estate. And could you imagine showing houses pre-ADA and lack of accessibility? But he did it, and was able to be a lead salesman 8 months out of the year one year, I remember.
A lead salesman. He didn't only get into real estate, he was a lead salesman.
For his office at, I believe it was Red Carpet Realty. They had the red jackets back in those days. And so I remember seeing that as a kid. And there's another indicator of what influenced me to not only work hard, but, really face challenges and find ways to get around barriers and what have you. So that's resilience that I think a lot of us have, not only in the disability community, but for many of us in Indian country, for our tribal nations.
What was it like growing up in Tempe, Arizona, and at the same time having these very deep roots in South Dakota?
It's pretty, I'm just so happy that my mom always took us back home. So I call home South Dakota, although I've never lived there physically. I've always been there a lot because we'd always visit for family events, or every summer we'd go back, and my brother and I would spend a month in South Dakota and really get that influence of Lakota country, from Pine Ridge to the Black Hills to Rapid City. We have family members all over. And so we really got to experience South Dakota a lot, although we were living in Arizona and growing up around a lot of different other tribal nations. Because Arizona, there's 22 different tribal nations.
22,
there.
wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot of diversity with Indian country in Arizona, not only with the nations themselves, but Phoenix and Tucson being areas with a lot of urban Indians like myself, as an urban Lakota living in Arizona Indian country. But having that connection to home and hearing the language and, the songs and the drumming and the ceremony. I'm just, both of us were very fortunate, my brother and I, that we had that in our lives, to where Kyle Village on Pine Ridge is home for us.
What are some of your favorite memories of going back in the summers?
Oh, well, growing up, prairie dog hunting, we were able to go out and shoot prairie dogs, and then bareback horse riding, and then hiking around the Badlands and the Black Hills, and swimming in the lakes and the creeks of the hills, visiting family on the res, and being able to participate in some of the powwows and, the Inipi ceremonies and other things that we were, actually had access to as young people. So that became part of our foundation as young people, having that experience, juggling between being an urban Indian in Phoenix, as well as that connection to our tribal nation back home.
Many people in the United States, unfortunately, don't know much about reservations. Besides that, they often have casinos on them. What would you want people to know about reservations and about life on a reservation?
Well, my wife and I often joke that, we have casinos, but they both, they don't really make money. They provide jobs, which is nice, so that people can work on the res. But, most of the tribal casinos are not profitable, but the people see the big tribal casinos next to big cities. Like here in San Diego, there's 18 different reservations in San Diego County alone.
There's 18. I know there were a lot, but I didn't know it was 18. I was like,
18 reservations in San Diego County. So there's, I believe, 7 or 8 casinos within the county. And then some of even closed down because they're in rural areas out in the mountains in the county. So they were just, hard to access for people. But there's a bunch of them doing very well, and in surrounding areas as well with other tribes, so that people assume that, oh, there's one Indian casino, all Indians must be doing well. And I always compare it to, well, if France got a casino, would they automatically share their money with everyone else in Germany and, Spain and European countries, because all Europeans are the same? Well, no, they're unique and different. Some similarities, yes, but different people, just like our tribal nations. So that's the uniqueness of our people, is we have, there's still 200 languages today that have survived. Many are at risk of being lost, but I think many of our languages are going to continue with the efforts that we're doing now for this generation, so that they have their language as their core and part of who they are as young people. So those are a lot of different areas, but those are really, things that get me excited and, doing the work that I do for Indian country in different areas. That's one of the areas I like, is the young ones and the future, that we all have a responsibility to help them succeed in whatever capacity we can.
what work are you doing with the young people today?
Well, for instance, we just did a pre-employment training services camp in Rosebud and Pine Ridge, back my home, Pine Ridge. So that was my Lakota recharge last month. I spent a couple weeks back in the homelands, and we did that camp with young ones so that they could transition from school to work. So that was different activities and training and preparing those young ones and having them mostly know about options and services available, not only through special education, but vocational rehabilitation and other services out there that may help them transition from school to work.
And was part of the camp also teaching them about Lakota ways and?
Oh yes, all of my camps and the work that I do at the University of South Dakota and other universities, I indigenize the approach and the curriculum, so that we're sure to make that part of our training, not necessarily teaching them how to be, but to bring it out of what they have already. And, many of the campers are wonderful singers and drummers and have wonderful talents and different native arts. And so that's part of the camp, is to showcase their existing talents, and that's wonderful for me to see. And at one of my camps, even one of the young men was such a strong, powerful singer. I'm contracting him through the Voc Rehab program so that he can get some recording equipment and I can use it for my next film. So you just never know with what kind of talent you can come across. And so this young man was in our pre-ets program at Rosebud. So that's a good partnership I have with the state of South Dakota Voc Rehab, as well as partnerships with IDD and Disability Council in South Dakota, and other funding agencies through our university disability centers that I believe are going to survive the funding cuts. So it'll allow us to continue supporting these, not only these young ones, but working age people and our elders that can't be ignored, so that they have quality of life after they're done working and still dealing with disability issues.
Please say more about camp for the elders, celebrating the elders.
Well, we always, from an indigenous standpoint, most of our tribal nations, that is a common value that we all share, is that our elders are our knowledge keepers, our traditional educators. They're, if they're lived long enough, they've lived through 3, maybe 4 generations, of people. So that's why we live with that 7th generation philosophy, So with that input and teachings from the elders, I often will go, there's still existing elder councils that are different from the elected tribal councils, that are, elder groups that get together and do good things for the community. And so elders are a big value, and kind of in the American world of work, let's take as an example, what's the message to people turning 65? What's their value as a worker? Well, with Social Security changes, I guess 67, I should say. But anyways, I mean, that's when many of our elders are getting started as those knowledge keepers and teachers that we want to utilize. We can't forget the knowledge that they bring, and keeping our traditions alive. It's more important now than ever for those elders to share our traditional ways, not only language and songs and drumming, but our food sovereignty and our data sovereignty. With working with our universities, we want to make sure that all that information is not compromised, and that we keep it as our sovereign right as tribal nations. So those are some of the things I teach through that 7th generation philosophy. So I'm actually wearing the number 7 t-shirt here for
wow.
So in honor of our theme, 7 generations. So thank you for mentioning that.
It sounds like elders have great, far from just retiring and not having much of a sense of purpose. It sounds like elders have great and sacred purpose in Lakota culture, huh?
Yeah, as I said, not only Lakota, but my wife is Hoopa from Northern California, just completely different tribal nation, distinct, different language, and they live on a river, so they're fishing tribe, I say, and then we're a buffalo tribe, and so again, the diversity of Indian country is so great, but those connections of our indigenous approach and perspective, those similarities bring us together as tribal nations. So it's nice to see the diversity of Indian country, as well as those connections we all share from an indigenous standpoint, not only here in what we now call the United States, but throughout other continents with other indigenous populations. So those are some of the things we share from that viewpoint, that lens on how we look at the world. And what I utilize and incorporate in my programs, which is why I think they have a level of success with my tribal students or the tribal people that we work with, is they know that even though we're coming from a university, let's say, it's still coming from the root of our traditional cultural knowledge. So those are the ways of knowing that I try to incorporate into my programs that I work with.
You've also made some documentaries about painful history. Will you please talk a little about about the documentary you made about boarding schools?
Oh, yes. Remember the Children featured my mom, who is a survivor of the Pine Ridge boarding school back on our home reservation. And this particular documentary that I made, it was a great honor for me to be asked to make this film because it was a group of volunteers that were researching what happened at that site where the boarding school was. And through their research, they found that there was a lot of Indian land that was taken and sold to Rapid City and the other buyers illegally, quite frankly. So that's still a land issue that's going on now, but some of that land has been reacquired. And part of that land is Remembering the Children Memorial. And in September, we're doing an honoring, and they're going to name the prayer plaza after my mom, Beverly.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, so it's the first of its kind in the United States in terms of a memorial, a place that identifies, other than graveyards at boarding schools. There's many graveyards of those children at the boarding schools out there now, but this is the first memorial site that identifies them by name and honors their memory so they're never forgotten. So that's a wonderful honor for them to name that after my mom. And she was part of that group of elders and attorneys and other, historians. It was a wonderful group of people that, were, first informed about it from, the elders. And it was always the elders bringing up, what about the children that died there? And now they just last week found another child's name in their research through letters between the priests and the school board of another young person that died there. So that's number 51. As of now, as the research continues, we want to make sure those kids aren't forgotten in those papers and files that are being looked at now by the Remembering the Children Memorial group. So it's now an actual entity that is running it and supporting it and managing the site, the memorial itself. So it's really cool that my film is part of that. When they asked me to produce it, and it was directed by Arlo Ironcloud, who's a tribal member, and then we had a good team with Bobby, another tribal member, as production manager, and then one of our non-Indian allies, I like to say, is Randall was in cinematography and editing. So it was a small team of 4 of us, but we really were able to produce a nice film that was recognized by a few film festivals and did well on the film festival circuit. And I'm actually I'm just coming back from London, where we were at that film festival there for my new film, My Native America, which is what I'm hoping will be a travel show. So I've been very fortunate as a filmmaker, creating documentaries that are not only getting some recognition and getting some airtime on Amazon Prime and Universal, Xfinity, and PBS and different networks. It's nice to be able to have that work not only shown, but utilized as curriculum for various university programs. So what a wonderful balance of creating these shows for the media and to educate, but it's also used as teaching tools for educational purposes. So it's nice to have that balance and be able to create films and utilize that experience. As you mentioned, I was after the NFL, I went on to pursue my dream as an actor and stuntman in Hollywood, and was fortunate to get some experience there And what I took from it was I never really sat in my trailer between shots, between takes. I would constantly watch behind the scenes, learning, and hoping someday that I could make a film behind the camera. And that was as a young person in my 20s, watching the directors and producers and sound and everything, taking it all in. And that was my on-the-job training, if you will, film school. So that was a great.
That was so smart to not only think of yourself as an actor acting in whatever role you were in, but say, I want to make movies. I'm going to learn everything I can.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's part of my dream in my older years. Now I'm behind the camera and I can control the narrative and be responsible for the message that's shown in the final product. So I'm really happy that I have that opportunity in my later years. Now that I'm an elder, and a grandpa and everything, I'm able to, leave those footprints and provide examples to the young ones as best I can.
I have to ask Jim, and I apologize. I would love to be using your Lakota name sometimes, but I just don't have it yet in my vocabulary. But I have to. So I have to ask Jim, what's it like being a stuntman?
Oh, well, I learned here. Fortunately, I had a friend that had a dojo, but he was also a stunt coordinator for the local studio here that we worked at. So that's where I got some of my training, doing fight scenes and things of that nature. I wasn't falling out of helicopters or anything like that. I was, mostly fight scenes and that physical part as a stuntman that I really enjoyed. Emulating a good fight scene. And my first film award was Cinemax Fight Scene of the Month, where Tom Berenger and myself had a big fight scene in the movie The Substitute back in '96, I believe. Boy, that's a long time ago. So over 30 years. So that's, it's nice, it's still being shown on TV. And so what I did as a young man is still out there. And so that was nice to have that experience, and then having some minor success as an actor stuntman. But then I really got frustrated with the stereotypes of not only a big guy, but a Native American, where they had the portrayals of us in Hollywood were still very stereotypical in the 90s, and I just couldn't do it. So I got frustrated and got out of it. And I'm glad I'm returning to the industry as a producer and director and writer, so I can be the storyteller for these films I'm producing today.
Speaking of storytelling, and this combines your time in the NFL and in storytelling, but where is it? You I thought please talk about pictures of my people getting shown on Fox. What was that like?
Yeah, the producers gave me a call, and initially they just wanted me to be an actor telling the story, but I wanted to be a producer and writer. So they agreed to that, knowing the quality of the work from my film, Seventh Generation. So that's still on Amazon Prime. So if you're a Prime member, you can watch it. So there's my little plug for my Seventh Generation film. But those producers saw that film and they got the idea of, let's ask, this guy who has experience not only as a tribal member, obviously, an advocate, but as a former player years ago. So when I got that email, I was very excited, as well as very cautious, because I didn't want the message to be lost. So that's why I demanded producer-writer credit, so that I could have something to say about the final product, to ensure that the proper message was being shared on NFL pregame on Fox Sports. So it ended up being a nice piece, and we got some extra time as well. It was part of a social justice series that the NFL on Fox pregame was doing, and mine was regarding indigenous perspectives, not only of mascots, but I wanted to go deeper than just mascots and give a deeper perspective of Indian country in America. So I was very fortunate to get that opportunity. We got some Emmy nominations. And now as an Emmy nominated filmmaker, that's opened other doors and opportunities. Because of that, I'm now a judge for the Academy, judging Emmys for documentaries and sports documentaries. So
No way.
yeah, so that's a fun kind of side gig of being able to judge and see all these wonderful films. So it's also an education as well, being a judge and seeing some of this quality work that's nominated for Emmys.
So millions, how many millions of people would have seen that pregame?
Thanksgiving, they estimate 30 to 33 million.
30 to 33 million.
Yeah,
What's it like knowing that your work was seen by that many people?
it's pretty awesome because that's what you want as a filmmaker is
Yeah.
eyeballs on the work, if you will, and having your product shown and having a platform. And obviously pregame on Thanksgiving with football and, you know, being a staple of American culture, it was nice to share an indigenous perspective, not only of Thanksgiving, but of the mascots and other issues that we are, you know, dealing with in Indian country. So I'm so glad that they agreed to have me produce and help write and tell that story so I could share my perspectives to a national audience that, you know, had high numbers. And then they replayed the segment for a Martin Luther King Day special that got, I believe, 6 million views. So that was another added bonus that the following holiday, Martin Luther King Day, they reshowed it, identifying different athletes that are doing what they can to better the world, if you will, and social justice issues.
Speaking of the NFL, what was it like for you the day you got drafted by the Lions?
Well, I was drafted by the Bengals, and then I bounced around 4 teams in 2 years in the NFL. So NFL stands for not for long, or for me, not for this Lakota. But I was with 4 different teams in 2 years, and that was a wonderful experience of, you know, kind of living the dream at a small level. And then, you know, just being able to play with some of those guys and having a short time in the league was a great experience. You know, at the time I was disappointed that I didn't get a long career, but in, you know, looking back, it motivated me to go into higher education and look at other options, since NFL didn't take care of everything, you know, for life's work. I now had, you know, a different perspective. And then I was rewarded as a graduate student working on my rehabilitation counseling administration degree. I was drafted by the World League, the NFL Europe, beginning of the NFL Europe. So I took a sabbatical from my graduate studies and got to play some football and make some money playing football in NFL Europe, and then coming back and continuing work on my graduate studies. And then the following year, I was signed with Arena Football, the indoor football league, and played in New York as well out there. And then, so that was a summer job during my graduate studies at San Diego State. So football helped finance my master's degree, I always say, and as well as the film world, because getting paid for the substitute, I was able to make some money and pay off some tuition and some bills for my graduate studies. So it was a good time to balance both those worlds as a graduate student working towards my future, but still being able to play football and then right away get into the world of Hollywood stuntman and doing some acting.
What made higher education getting a master's degree is such a priority for
That was mom and dad, most definitely. They always were encouraging me to utilize my athletic skills to get a scholarship, and then always saying that you need to graduate. Promise us that you'll utilize this full ride scholarship to get a degree and don't waste it. So I always said I made the promise that I would. And so that was always in the back of my mind. I didn't want to disappoint the family, but seeing what they did utilizing their college degrees, because they both graduated from Arizona State as well. So, we're a Sun Devil family. I say, I believe our family has 10 degrees from Arizona State. So that was another thing where I had to represent the family and graduate and finish my bachelor's degree. So I was able to do that right before the NFL draft. So 1987 was a good year because on New Year's Day was the Rose Bowl, and then 10 days later was the Hula Bowl. And we won that game, the West All-Stars versus the East. And then I was drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals, and then I graduated with my bachelor's, and then I went off to camp in Cincinnati after that. So it was quite an interesting time for me as a young person.
Wow. Well, what, so the NFL draft is coming up. Oh, it's in the spring, right?
Yeah, it actually happened last April. So a couple of Sun Devils were drafted, and some went in free agency. So I'm hoping those young men have successful professional careers. They did well as collegiate athletes. So I follow those young kids that I follow in college and see how they do at the pro level. But it's hard to last. Again, you better have a plan that's beyond football.
So what words of wisdom will you give to a young NFL player about having a plan for having a vision for the future?
Well, particularly with today's player and the amount of money that they make, they got to be very careful because it can be done in one play. You're one play away from being done because
Oh my gosh.
of injury. So that's something you always got to have in the back of your mind.
That just makes me nervous as you say that, Jim.
Yes, that's something where we all know that it can happen, and those are some of the realities of a violent sport is, that the body will break down, and every year someone does go down and has a career-ending injury, and that's the nature of the sport. But fortunately, I'm glad they were doing more safety measures, particularly with concussion protocols when my son was playing high school football here in San Diego. So I was able to know that he was getting more protection than I was when I was a young person, because they didn't know what they were doing. And I would have played differently, not using my head as much if I would have known about concussion syndrome and things of that nature. So that's another thing with advice towards these players today is manage that money and ensure that you can take care of intergenerational wealth. Because now they have an opportunity to make sure the future generations of their family are taken care of if they invest properly. So, and then of course, take care of your body and keep working hard, because there's always a young person that wants your job. Every year, there's rookies that will come in that want your job. So it's just a very competitive atmosphere, and I'm glad I was able to experience that.
So take care of the money. That's really good, but what about, like, you had a vision for your future beyond football? Like how does a I mean, I'm sure it's overwhelming, like you're playing football, there's huge crowds, there's all sorts of stuff going on constantly. How does a young player cultivate a vision for the purpose beyond football?
Well, that again was how I was trained early, because even in high school, I was waking up at 4 in the morning to go work out before school. So, and then I had a paper out as well as that. So,
You say you were waking up at 4 in the morning.
yeah, just to
Wow.
go work out, just because I wanted to be a champion. I wanted to be the best. And then I was competing in 4 different sports. So I really had to have, a unique training regimen and, speed and power and what have you. And so being in those sports was awesome, because year round I had to be working out and being involved and training. So that was part of my ethic, if you will, that I learned early as a young person in high school. And not every high school person's willing to do that. And, that's just something that I had instilled in me as a young person, that I wanted to, be the best and emulate, my heroes, like we started the show with Jim Thorpe and Billy Mills. So, those are people. And then watching ASU football growing up, that's where I wanted to be. So again, I was fortunate that my dream school was Arizona State, and I got a scholarship to play there, and then finish my career at the Rose Bowl. So again,
Did,
very
you,
fortunate.
did either of your parents or your grandparents play sports?
Dad played for the championship team at Tempe High, where I went. I went to Tempe High. We didn't win the championship. We ended up, we were in the semifinals. So we got to play in ASU Stadium, which was awesome for me as a kid, playing in my dream stadium as a high schooler. But we lost that game and we missed the state title. So we were in the Final Four, if you will. But yeah, Dad played sports, and then Mom was just athletic. She didn't get to participate in structured sports because she was in those boarding schools where she was just trying to survive some of the, just the cruelty and the punishment and trauma she was going through there. But she kept who she was. She always says, being in the fields where they'd have to finish their day working in the fields, that's where they could speak their language without getting beaten. So that's where she said that's where they didn't beat it out of me. And she's talking about her culture and her language. So those are all motivators for me to, try to represent the family and the people. And then, that motivated me to achieve at a high level in athletics, as well as, I'm not an academic by nature, but I've succeeded in academia because of persistence and not being afraid to ask for help. And suddenly being a scholar and an elder has been quite a process over my lifespan. So I'm very fortunate in that regard.
I started the show by reading your quote, which is a profound vision for the future for the seventh generation. Can you please say more about your vision for the future of Native Americans and humanity in general?
Well, just to explain seventh generation philosophy, all of us as two-leggeds as human beings have responsibilities 7 generations behind and 7 generations ahead. So that's a lot of years, 240 years of responsibility if you break it down in just a 20-year generational span. So 7 generations behind, we're the people of Wounded Knee for me. And those have family members buried at that mass grave. So not all Americans go to mass graves to visit family, but I do. So obviously that's a traumatic experience, but I'm able to, manifest that trauma in a good way through athletics and academics, and ultimately as a teacher and academic, and telling those stories, that are very difficult but must be told. And that's another responsibility of the 7 generation philosophy, is the next 7 generations need to remember who we are. So taking that 7 generations behind and 7 generations ahead, I'm a grandfather, so I've been lucky to see 3 generations in my lifetime. But what will my footprints leave, that I leave here? today influence those generations that I'll never see. And that's a wonderful responsibility and philosophy that I think we're missing in contemporary America. It's more about now and more about individualism versus thinking of the group and the whole of the people, the full circle. So
You said, how will my footprints that I leave today influence future generations that I'll never see?
yeah.
Wow. Wow. That gets one thinking.
Yeah, and it's a responsibility. And then again, being taught that way allowed me to again have success at different, levels. But ultimately, the success is representing the people as best I can. And having that balance is the true success. Because you always hear people at the top of the pyramid by themselves. Well, they're lonely.
Yeah.
So
In so
again,
many ways.
yeah, so being part of that circle and that balance between the physical realm, which is material wealth, but also that spiritual, emotional, and mental balance, so you can be centered in your circle. That's the medicine wheel philosophy that we practice in the Lakota culture, and what I apply to my everyday philosophy as well, utilizing that circular medicine wheel philosophy for balance and wellness.
What does I entitle this episode Sacred Success? What do those words mean to you?
Well, I kind of like it because we got to stay rooted in that sacred knowledge, our traditions of our family and our people, our community. And then what is success measured as? In a vocational American capitalistic system, it's having success and making money. But that's, as I just mentioned, that's not the only aspect of success. Because even if they are successful in that realm, they're usually lonely and by themselves. And who wants that? You want to be around people you love and family and friends and community. So that's a natural, inherent relation we have as human beings, is we want that success, yes, but also success of family and success of having that connection spiritually, no matter what it is. Many people choose church and Christianity. I utilize our traditional ways of prayer and spirituality from the Lakota perspective. So those are the ways of how do we balance all of our individual circles so that we can be more effective impacting other people's circle. And then when you think of the ultimate circle as Mother Earth, which we all are part of as a species. So I guess that's how we can, start winding up, is the importance of Mother Earth and that connection we all have, is Ina Maka, which stands for Mother Earth in my language, is we need to respect her and make sure she's taken care of so that we all can thrive together. And some of these philosophies, again, are not being utilized today. And hopefully in my old age, I get to see more of that from our younger generations, which I am seeing with the ones that I'm working with.
That's very encouraging. Very encouraging. Last question. So in my work, I talk about the power of doing our imperfect best, and what it means to me as I go for the best I envision for myself and the best that I want to offer other people. But when mistakes and imperfections come up, instead of quitting, I try to learn from all that and be empowered by that to go again for my best. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
Well, none of us are perfect. And, how boring would it be if we all were? So it's the imperfections that make us unique, so those are the things that, those imperfections can be beauty, those are some of the elements that make us different and unique as individual human beings. yet the connections that we all share as imperfect beings, in whatever capacity we have. So those are, I always compare the indigenous culture and community to the disability culture and community, because both of those communities and groups of people have been marginalized and underserved and forgotten about, to where we needed, federal acts just for self-determination, both for Indian people as well as people with disabilities. So that's where those connections for me come in naturally, representing both of those communities through my dad and my mom. Again, it's very rewarding that I can represent their memories and their influence on me in my professional life as I leave those footprints for those future generations.
Is warriorfoundation.com the best place for people to find you?
Oh, actually, Gen7films.com is my new production company.
Okay, so everyone just ignore that last one.
Yeah,
Gen 7
Yep, it's
Films.
GEN number 7 films, FILMS.com. So like Generation 7 films, but just Gen 7.
So is this better?
That's perfect.
Cool.
And then that will have a connection to my Warriors Society development, the consulting program. But this will lead you to my films, which I encourage you to go check out, because regardless of which film you choose, you'll learn something new, I guarantee you, regarding some of the history and some of the different things that Indian country is dealing with, not only today in contemporary America, but historically as well. So thank you for that plug. I appreciate it, Jason. And again, it's wonderful for me as an elder working with young people like you that are out there making a difference. And you're leaving your footprints, not only with the work you do, but with this podcast and getting information out to your public and your friends, and that's what it's all about, is what I call the moccasin telegraph, is we need to keep sharing those stories and, represent our family and our people as best we can. So I want to congratulate you on the work that you do as well. And thank you for having me as a guest on your show. Again, Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I love that title.
It's been an honor to have you as a guest. Thanks so much for sharing so many stories and your vision with us, and your wisdom and your hope for the future. Thank you, Jim. And say your Lakota name one more time.
Tasunka Akan Wicakte. You can practice that, and next time I see you, you can greet me.
Yeah, it's going to take me a while.
Wicakte, yeah. It's different phonetics. It's a whole different deal. So I'm glad that our young ones, it's so good to see our younger generations. It's happening. That Black Elk philosophy is, what are we going to do to make sure that 7th generation after Wounded Knee is still here? And seeing the young ones speak the language and do well in athletics, and that's encouraging. And challenging times, it's seeing those young ones make it and be resilient and still do what they do. So again, thank you for what you do and representing your community in a good way.
Thank you so much, and please stay on while I end the podcast. It just takes a minute to upload.
And thank you, everybody. Palamia, thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for tuning in and enjoying the show and thinking about all of Jim's stories and wisdom and these powerful and important subjects. And please tune in next week for another episode. And remember, each of you has a unique purpose on this earth. Thanks so much for being you. See you next time.